meetings, and you're here. So that's gratifying to know that our messaging has worked. The Water District is dedicated to keeping your water safe and reliable, and keeping the dam operating safely for the community remains at the top of our priority list. And by the way, are there any local elected officials in the room tonight? I'd like to recognize you if you're here. Staying away, huh? Okay. They're all chicken. Okay, so continuing. So what I'd like to ask you, if you have any questions during the evening, write them down. We have cards that we're providing to people, I hope, and we can assimilate those questions and answer them as we move along. All the meeting materials, the agenda of tonight's presentation also can be found on valleywater.org/Anderson-Dam-Project. Also, tonight we are live streaming on Facebook, so all you watching in your home or your office or wherever, or here in the room, welcome. As some of you know, Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project is personally important to us, to you, to me, to all our neighbors, and we want to keep you abreast of the progress, and it's a major priority to the district. We last met here in June, where staff provided an update on the project, discussed impacts to local streets and parks located at the base of the dam, and answered questions and listened to your concerns. This evening, staff will provide an update on Anderson Dam, including details about changes to truck haul routes for the delivery of the materials, temporary street and park closures, impact downstream of the creek, and work hours. Given the importance and the size of the seismic retrofit project, some impacts are unavoidable. Staff has evaluated all possible options to minimize the project impact on your neighborhood and will continue to do so throughout the planning phase of the project. Pardon me. You may also recall that we shared with you that we have several local dams in need of seismic retrofitting, and these dams are also top of our priority work needs and will happen soon as possible. Pardon me, we're seeing a bit of a cold tonight. In future meetings, the District Board of Directors will evaluate the schedule and construction sequence of each of the dam seismic retrofit projects to achieve a balance of priorities, including the necessity of water supply for our families, our agricultural community, and the environment. Potential impacts to projects will be reviewed at these meetings, and public participation and comments are encouraged. Another critical update that you will hear tonight are the one final reminder in your meeting packet, which we have included an invitation to next week, October 30th, at the Coyote Warehouse Project pre-construction meeting and facility tour. This is a great family event that runs from 6 to 8:30 p.m. next Tuesday evening. I believe we would love to see you there and have you tour our facility. If you attend, you will be treated to a tour of the Coyote pumping plant and learn about the Coyote Warehouse Project planned for construction in early 2019. So, I will hand over the meeting tonight to Catherine the Great, Logan, and her sidekick, Amanda Sal. So, here you go, Catherine. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much, Director Varela. So, I'll go through a few more details before we actually launch into the presentation. I will introduce some of the other people who will be providing information to you tonight. So Director Varela already referred to Hemang Desai, who is standing there along the wall. He will be doing a bit of the presentation. And then tonight, when we focus on the different project impacts, we've asked Mr. Rick Hopkins, if you can stand please. He is our environmental lead, and he actually works for our program management consultant. He will be providing more details on the impacts that we are foreseeing for the project. Finally, I would like to introduce somebody who is going to be your front person here for the coming years, and that is because the district has recently created two separate divisions to handle all the water utility capital work. That has been primarily under me for a number of years, and it is just too much work. So Mr. Christopher Hakes has recently been promoted to a deputy officer, so he is my peer. He is going to be running a division, a new division, and some of my projects are going to be dedicated to him. That includes Anderson Dam, it includes the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project that the district recently launched, as well as the other seismic retrofit and dam improvement projects. I will continue to support Chris and his team as they move forward. I will certainly try to attend these meetings, but he will be your front face from here on out. And it certainly has been a pleasure most of the time to work on this project and to be here and present our progress and what we're coming up with in the future to all of you. So with that, let's move forward. Just a few more things. Let me see. We welcomed you. There's going to be a Q&A, a question and answer period following the presentation. For those of you who want to step out of the room and go live on Facebook, you're welcome to do so. And those of you who are on Facebook, you can submit a question online, and those will come through to our staff, and they'll bring them up to us during the Q&A. And then finally, as always, we put a survey in your packets. We also receive comments and helpful lessons learned come from your feedback as to how we did. And as a team, we're always looking to improve on how we make our presentations and engage with the public at these public meetings. Finally, we did get our phone boards up a little bit late, but in the back of the room are some of the boards that you'll see here during the slide presentation. Some of the print may be too fine for you to read here, so feel free after the meeting to go and take a closer look at them. We'll have staff back there who will be able to answer questions that you might have. So feel free to stick around a little bit after the meeting if you can. With that, here's our agenda. We're going to briefly talk about the project components, spend some time on the project impacts, talk about what we're doing in terms of investigations. We're still doing a lot of data collection out there, and then briefly talk about the project schedule before we go into the Q&A. So I'll begin briefly with project components, which actually I will hand over to him on his side to go, but you're right, I have to do the first slide. This is just an aerial view of the existing dam and Anderson Reservoir. The dam embankment is what you see looking from Morgan Hill. The spillway is up to the upper left. We have an outlet pipe about 5 feet in diameter that runs directly below the entire dam and discharges to Coyote Creek. And then the dam crest is that road that people can currently drive across or walk across. And then, of course, our parking lot up there next to the Anderson Lake Recreation Area. So with that, come on.
Thank you, Captain. Good evening. Hemant Desai, Engineering Unit Manager for the Dam Safety Group. And I'll be providing you some information on what are the different components of the project. So the project was conceived because studies in about 2008 found that the existing embankment, that is the existing dam, has a foundation which has a potential for liquefaction. And thereafterwards, through investigation, we also found that there are a number of faults which basically crisscross the site, and they can have some adverse impact on the dam itself. Okay, so in order to address that, what we are planning to do is basically remove remove most of the existing embankment, remove the liquefiable soil, which is the foundation of the dam, and then replace this with a better dam, a stronger dam, which can resist maximum credible earthquakes. So what you see in the gray is a footprint of the retrofit, which is basically removing most of the dam and then rebuilding it. In addition, we also found that the outlet pipe was crisscrossed by faults, and like I said, and those are vulnerable to any offsets. So we would be replacing that with the low-level outlet pipe, which is shown in yellow here. We will also be having an additional higher level outlet, which is shown in violet or purple. In addition, if you remember in 2017, when there were problems with Orville spillway, the governor issued an order asking all the dam owners to reevaluate the spillways. And so the district reevaluated the spillway, and they found that even though in current configuration the spillway is safe, it needs to be brought up to new standards. So this project will be addressing that. It will be replacing most of the spillway and bringing it to current standards, basically. What you see in the dash orange, the purple and green is the diversion structure, and I'll brief you more when I go through the construction sequence, the importance of this diversion structure. It is basically there for construction. It is basically there to keep the reservoir drained through construction, 2 years of construction. So here's the construction sequence. Basically, the construction is planned for 5 years, out of which 2 years, year number 3 and year number 4, we plan to keep the reservoir drained so that we can construct the retrofitted embankment. So in year 1, we will build the diversion structure. We plan to build the diversion structure as shown right here. So that is year 1 and year 2, where we basically construct the diversion structure. In year 3, so at the year end 3, in spring of year 3, we will have this dam with a diversion structure, and we'll start dewatering the reservoir. And see, the dam here is at elevation 647, which is the current elevation. In year 3, during summer, which is this figure right here, we will excavate the existing embankment to this configuration and bring it down to an elevation of 570, which is lower than 647. We'll winterize it over winter of year 3, and then summer of year 4, which is April to June, we'll come and excavate it all the way up to the core, which is what we'll leave in place. This is what we'll leave in place from the existing dam, and then rebuild it the same year by October to 570. Now, the importance of 570 is that 570 basically gives us the protection we need, which is 1 into 2,000 during the 2 winters where we keep the reservoir completely drained, but we have a lower dam. Then in year 5, we'll come in summer and basically build it back to 656 elevation, and then allow it to fill in year 5. So that's the construction sequence. I spoke about the Orville incident and what it led to, and basically we'll be replacing the spillway walls, the chute basically. There'll be a new chute provided with proper under drainage anchors so that we don't get anything like Orville. And what will be left in place is this green part. We continue to evaluate the spillway. This is the existing concrete spillway, and thereafter there is an unlined portion of the spillway which the district is still evaluating. DSOD at the 60% evaluation asked us to do some more studies here, mostly related to the foundation geology. They want to be sure that that portion, the unlined portion of the spillway is on competent rock. So that's what we'll be evaluating this winter. And with that, I'll invite Rick Hopkins, who will be providing you a description of the key impacts. Thank you.
A little taller, so I'll bend over. Thank you. Some of the things I'm going to present are ideas that have come about over the last few months in terms of trying to design a construction project that has the least effect on the neighborhood possible. And so these are the ideas that we have and what works from a construction sequencing perspective. So, okay. Yeah, part of the diversion and the amount of, as Simone pointed out, one of the things we're going to be doing is that the outlet structures are much larger than the current one, which now can release about 450 feet per second of water, CFS. The issue here is that as this outlet now gets bigger, because DSOD has required that the reservoir be able to be dewatered in a relatively short period of time in case of an emergency, the amount of water that's being released now is considerably greater. So one of the things being looked at by the design team is how the creek is a certain amount of erosiveness here, and there may be a certain, so there are some issues with that, and so from a flooding perspective and the amount of the walls being washed away, that it will need to be armored if we stuck with this design. As part of that work, we're looking at alternatives to this, and we don't know just yet exactly what those might be, but some of those could result in reopening the channel where the spillway comes out, sort of what we call the north channel, and putting more water in that, and leaving this to take the current level of water that it currently can take, which is 450 CFS. We don't know if that's feasible yet, but that is being evaluated so that we can lessen the level of effects we're having on this, on the ecosystem. As I mentioned, we've been pushing a lot of the stockpile and a lot of the work we're doing now into the reservoir itself, which has some issues that are related to constructability, but it's been designed in a way that works well. So the blue areas are areas that material that's pulled from the embankment will be stockpiled and stored for later use. Much of the dam, in fact, most of the dam material will be reused in reconstructing the new, stronger dam. The white areas are this basalt hill and what's referred to as packed with gravel. Those are areas that are borrow sites. We're going to borrow material from them. Some of the original material from the dam clay core came from this area, and so we're going to be targeting this area again, hoping we get enough suitable clay, which will be important in terms of building the dam back. The red area is a disposal area, and that's what any extra material that's left over will be disposed of in the reservoir. These down here are some areas, staging areas and stockpile areas where a small amount of import material, which we'll show in a second, will be brought in as special filter material, will be brought in, and it represents a very small part of the process. So to give you an idea, there's over 9 million cubic yards of material being moved in the dam itself, from the dam in these areas. That's, a fair amount of material, and so that most of that is in the reservoir, and so the purpose of that is to minimize air quality, noise, and traffic within the neighborhood. The imported materials I talked about is only about 250,000 cubic yards, which represents less than 3% of the amount of material that's being moved around in the reservoir. So that goes to show you that that's a relatively small amount. There's an equal amount of filter material that will be brought in directly to the dam, and we'll show you those travel routes in a second. So this represents how the imported materials will be brought in off of 101 down Monterey Highway and on Burnett Avenue, and then stockpiled on the site. Then the equal amount of material, another 250,000 cubic yards of this filter material, will be brought in off of Cochran Road, 101 off of Cochran Road, and directly to the embankment. So those are the two areas of travel for this imported material. We also are building a conveyor system trying to minimize truck traffic by the neighborhood. And so the conveyor system will run along Malaguera, taking about half of the lane. And that will be used for moving the materials from these stockpile areas over to the embankment. And again, this is all done trying to, it's not the most efficient way to move dirt, but it is one of the ways that we come up with in terms of minimizing the effects of the neighborhoods. And this, we will be preserving the Sycamore Avenue Bridge, and as I said, half of the Melgara will be closed during this construction process. This is just a picture of what, this is an enclosed conveyor system and a picture of how the conveyor system will work. Well, this work will also affect some of the recreational activities around the reservoir because, from a safety perspective, they'll have to be closed. The Toyon Picnic and the Live Oak Picnic areas will be closed. The Serpentine Trail and Live Oak Trails will be temporarily closed during construction. And the Coyote Creek Trail will be temporarily rerouted because, again, we have to keep people away from the construction traffic. It's a safety issue. During the entire 5 years of construction, this portion of Cochrane Road will be closed. It'll be a local traffic can get through, but it's generally going to be closed to non-local traffic during the 5 years of construction. And the current road that goes across the dam and down the other side is going to be permanently closed, while pedestrian traffic will be allowed to walk on that once constructed and once reopened. You will no longer be able to drive over the dam and down. And the way it's being solved is the road up to the parking area is going to be 2 lanes now, so the traffic will come in and out of that area, the entrance. And this portion of Coyote Road will be removed. And there will be some rerouting, which is to be determined of pedestrian traffic down and around over here somewhere. We'll also expand the parking lot to what it currently is. And we are going to turn it back over to Catherine, who will finish up for us and take us through this.
Thank you very much, Rick. So a few things, let me just go back one slide. So despite the fact that we have done years of study, years of geotechnical investigations, and other types of data collection, we're not done. We are starting to engage on a regular basis with different regulatory agencies, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, there's just a myriad of them, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the National Marine Fisheries Service. These are all agencies who will want to have a say in how we construct the project and will be requiring us to mitigate in certain ways for the impacts of the project. So I'm just going to run through a few other investigations that are ongoing right now and that we'll be doing in the near future. So first of all, one of the important elements of digging and excavating is that we may come across Native American remains or Native American artifacts. And so we are planning in the next several months to do quite a bit of subsurface investigations. We'll be digging some trenches in the areas just below the dam. This is in the Toyon and the Live Oak picnic areas, as well as these 2 sites where our imported material will be stored. Again, there's a concern that even piling material on the ground may somehow impact artifacts or remains that are buried below. So we're working with the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, we refer to it as SHPO for short, and we have to follow their rules and make sure that we collect the data appropriately. And then within the reservoir, again, we will be stockpiling, we will be borrowing, and we will not do excavations to look for Native American artifacts or remains, but we will be doing some visual surveys of those areas. And despite the fact that we've done almost 4 years of geotechnical and geological investigations, when we submitted the 60% design, so the stages of design of a project are usually 30, 60, 90%, and then final. And at each of those stages, our regulators, the Division of Safety of Dams, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission have to review those plans, comment on them, and provide us with direction or requests for more information. So right now, we are in the process of looking at more geotechnical investigations for the new outlet works, a few more on the embankment, downstream bridges, the replacement of the spillway. We want to find out what is that geology underneath the existing spillway, and then also make sure that the stockpile areas and the borrow areas are going to withstand the activities that will be taking place. Also, because fish habitat is a very important feature of Coyote Creek, and because National Marine Fisheries Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife are going to be very keen on our impacts to fisheries, we are going to be doing fish assessment, the habitat assessments, and also, let me move to the landslides in a minute, but we're going to be doing some surveys of creeks that flow into Anderson Reservoir, also one of the major creeks, Upper Coyote Creek, that flows into Coyote, and then the downstream portions of Coyote Creek below the dam. And we have to collect habitat area as well as fishery studies and the like. And then also, on both the east and the west ends of Anderson Reservoir, on its southern end, right here, there is a potential for landslides to occur. They have occurred ever since the reservoir was built. There are areas of unstable soil, and the complete drawdown of the reservoir may have some impacts in that area. So we will be doing pre-construction surveys and then also monitoring the areas carefully during construction. Finally, this is a question that has come up a number of times in past meetings, is where is Morgan Hill's water supply going to come from when Anderson is out of service for those 2 years that Anderson will be dewatered? So first of all, let me point out the key areas where groundwater is recharged to your basin. Down here in the south, we have the Church Avenue ponds. Up here further north, the San Pedro ponds, the Main Avenue ponds, and then this blue line here along 101 is the Madrone Channel. All of those are areas that the district operates, and in putting water onto those ponds, and it filters down and provides your source of supply. So when Anderson is going to be dewatered, Church Avenue ponds are going to be fed, as they are now, by Chesbrough and Eunice reservoirs. All right? The ponds and the Madrone Channel that are in the north, their water supply will come from the San Luis Reservoir, which is over on the Pacheco Pass, Highway 152. So we have a large pipe that comes in a Pacheco tunnel, runs up along 101, and that will provide imported water to maintain the groundwater recharge for those years. So here is our current schedule for the project. It's moved a little bit, primarily because of the outcome of the 60% design. And we received those requests from DSOD and from FERC in July of this year saying, please investigate this some more, provide us data here, etc. So we are actually continuing with design, and we'll be done with design probably by 2020. Our CEQA process, that's the Environmental Impact Report, has been moved slightly. We had originally anticipated to release it this fall, the draft EIR, but we'll probably be coming out with that in June or July of next year. The key reason is because this additional data that we're collecting now has to be incorporated into that draft environmental impact report. Otherwise, it will be considered unfinished, and it's better to put it all together now rather than be delayed and having to rewrite it later. With the final EIR then in early 2020. Then the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA, we have to do a federal document as well. That's going to somewhat follow and lag a little bit behind the CEQA work. And then, of course, the permitting, as I said, we're engaging with the regulatory agencies now, but they will also want to read the documents that we prepare, the environmental documents, and we will only be able to finalize those permit agreements with them after the final EIR is certified. So, and again, I will leave the caveat that we're planning to get the permits by 2021, but there is no guarantee of that. That's a process that we can do the best to manage, but we cannot control. This is something we'll keep you, the community, apprised as we continue coming in the future and providing you project updates. So on this chart, we show construction beginning around 2022 and then lasting for the 5 years that Himong had explained to you out to the year 2027. And before we go to the Q&A, I know there's one question that's been asked twice and we've been caught flat-footed both times. So I want to talk about a little bit about the high-speed rail project that is still being considered and planned for. And there was a question asked in the last 2 meetings, how is that possibly going to interfere with our Anderson Dam construction? So we did make contact with HSR, we call it HSR, High Speed Rail. We did make contact with people who are working on it, and they are predicting at this point in time, again, with the new governor and in Sacramento, we don't know what exactly this project is going to look like or how it'll move forward. But they're going to be doing utility relocations and some initial road work starting around the same time that Anderson is slated to begin. And then the major laying of the track and all the other civil works of putting the track down is going to happen in later years. But funny enough, it's going to be about the same period of time currently anticipated as the Anderson Dam construction. The high-speed rail alignment will be to the west of Highway 101. So it is, the work of Anderson will be separated by Highway 101. However, there may be truck traffic along 101 that may be associated with the high-speed rail if this is indeed what the schedule of that is going to be. And that will then be added to the import material that will be coming in trucks to our Anderson Dam construction site. All right, so to stay informed, this is where you can find more information on the project. Tonight's presentation is also going to be available at the website at the top. You can sign up and you'll get project information and updates. And then Jose Villarreal is somewhere here, right smack dab in the middle. So please give him a call and send him an email if you're interested in getting more information. And with that, that concludes our presentation tonight. And so now's the time for questions and answers. And we do have a mic that Jose is going to take around. Please use it because it makes a real difference to everybody in the room to be able to hear your questions.
Is there a question somewhere? Oh, I'll come up, sir.
When we had the floods from Cuyahoga Creek to Cuyahoga River that went into San Jose in 16 and 17, what kind of program have you got set up for the coming solar minimum for 26 and 27? We're going to have the same amount, exactly the same, very similar to what we had, the last 2 years.
So I forgot to mention that we do have staff from the district who are working on the Coyote Creek Flood Protection Project, which the board directed staff to make a top priority. Afshin Rouhani, I'd like to invite him to come up and provide just a brief overview of that project and the timeline.
So yeah, actually, I'm unit manager of our water resources policy and planning unit. And yes, we've been working on the project planning since last year. We initially looked at doing any kind of fast action that we could take to reduce the risk of flooding for the community and the urban area. And we were able to do one project in the Rock Springs community to reduce the risk of flooding there. And also at the same time started looking at the entire flood problem in the urbanized area. So that project is going on. We'll be going through the planning process. We'll be developing alternatives over the next year. First order of business, so defining the problem and getting back to the community. We're actually preparing for a public meeting in around December or perhaps January, depending on the holiday, timeline. But coming back to the community, letting you know what the plan is over the short term, long term. And at the same time, we're also starting the Corps of Engineers feasibility study. The Corps has not been interested in themselves studying the problem, but we will do the study with their assistance, pay for that, so that we can potentially develop some federal funding for the flood protection project, if that works. So it'll be a two-track planning study, district planning and Corps of Engineers planning. In terms of timeline, we should be able to develop alternatives over the next year to 18 months. And then, as the Board of the Water District approves us to move ahead, we will develop a planning study and move on into design. So, the exact question, I'm not absolutely certain, but the dam project and the flood protection project are, we're coordinating and, each is progressing down the track. Yeah, so our plan, if at all possible, is to reduce the risk of flooding to the urbanized area to the level of the 2017 flood before Anderson Dam is finished with construction of this project. So in terms of timeline, the Coyote Creek project should move faster than the dam project. We hope.
Okay, I have a question here.
Just a follow-up to what we're sharing with you here. So the political side of this is what I represent. I can assure you that what you're hearing tonight about all the regulators, the permitting, all these agencies that we have to be in front of, your elected representatives are in Sacramento or in Washington, meeting with these folks, pushing forward to make sure that we get the permits in a timely manner so that we can project accurately these timelines that we're bringing to you. So it's a complete project that everybody's involved with to make sure. When it comes to the creeks, we just wrapped up this year our maintenance project, which we do every year, that where we get into the creeks before the next rain season begins. So we've completed that. So we're all about flood protection. So we are on top of it as best we can. What Mother Nature decides to deliver to us, we'll wait and see. But we are preparing ourselves as best we can to protect you. So reassured that that's what the Water District is working on your behalf. Okay. You had another question here?
Yes, right over here.
Hi, I'm from the Olinger neighborhood, downtown San Jose. We were flooded in 2017. I have a question for you. I'd like you to be more specific about, number one, what is the project that you're working on? Number two, when will the Water District implement a pump-over solution to help reduce reservoir water levels if heavy rains hit again before the new dam and spillway are built, which is still at least, 10 years away? Is this just another calculated risk the district is taking that there will not be any more heavy rains or major earthquakes? You got lucky last time, nobody died, but if that dam spills or if there's an earthquake, at the same time when it's, full, we could all be flooded downtown, not just our neighborhoods. And We can't afford another flood like that. It was what, 70 million in damages? And the pumps cost what, 4 million? So are you willing to gamble with our lives and our properties like you did last time? Because this has been going on for a long time, many years. You guys didn't do anything.
You have a question?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay, so let's
What are you
answer.
gonna do?
Well, let me try to answer. Hang on.
In terms of the specific flood protection project, as I described, we're in the planning phase. So we're going to be coming to the community soon with our initial concepts of what we have in mind for the flood protection project. That's over the next 2 or 3 months. But Catherine's going to address the reservoir.
So in response to your question, when are we going to get a pump over system in place? Part of this construction, as we explained, one of the project components is to build a new outlet pipe. Not one that goes under the dam, but it's going around. If you're looking downstream, it's through the right abutment of it's really going to go through the hill right there and then come out in Coyote Creek. That pipe will be bigger than the pipe that's currently in place. And so the district will have the capability of releasing more water to the creek in the event of back-to-back storms. If you recall, in 2017, we opened up our outlet pipe in very, very early January. When the first big rainstorm of January came, it was the first weekend of January, that Monday, we made a decision to open that pipe to start releasing 425 cubic feet per second. That pipe remained open all the way through, actually until almost mid-April, all right, so that we could drain the reservoir to the best extent possible. As it turned out, it wasn't enough, right? And that has happened a number of times in the last 70 years that the dam has been there in place. The future dam is going to have a larger outlet, which is going to allow us to drain more water so that we have that ample amount of storage remaining in the reservoir to capture the water and try to prevent it from going over the spillway. So that's something that will be put in place once this project is done. So you're right, it's about 10 years away. All right, until then, we are keeping the reservoir at or below the seismic restriction level. This is a level that FERC and DSOD have placed on the dam. And that's why you can't do boating, is because we have to keep it at a low level for the safety of the community, both upstream and downstream.
A question over here from this gentleman.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Navy Park in downtown San Jose. I was flooded last year. I have 2 questions. My first question is about the rule curve that you guys adopted last winter. I believe it was a lower level, so I just wanted to know, I think if I remember correctly, you said you would maintain this rule curve until the dam is rebuilt.
So last winter, staff did have a discussion with the board of directors about potentially lowering the reservoir even lower than what we would normally do at the beginning of the winter season, primarily for the purpose of staying below that seismic restriction. Back in 2017, when it rained so hard, we did exceed that seismic restriction. And that caused a lot of anxiety in many communities, no question about that. So the board decided to lower the reservoir even further last December so as to make sure that even if it rained a lot, we would be a lot closer to that seismic restriction, which is, we didn't mention it here, but right now we can only keep it about 55% full at all times, 55% or below. So we lowered it even farther in case it rained. Well, it was a fairly, we would say, barely normal to dry winter in this area. And the reservoir never really gained a lot of volume. In fact, in the spring, we had to take water from San Luis Reservoir and add it to Anderson so we would have enough of a cold water pool to release down Coyote Creek through the summer months to support the fish habitat. that's there all the way down to the bay. And so we had to actually supplement the amount that had run off from the watershed from the storms. November 20th, which is next month, is going to be another board meeting, and during that board meeting, staff will be presenting a winter preparedness program for everybody, for the board to understand what measures we're taking. And there will be a discussion again with the board. Do you want to lower the reservoir to the same extent that you did last year in advance of the winter rains? So that is going to be debated. It might be the same level as last year. It may be different. So that's going to be a staff discussion with the board.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, so in July, you heard back, I think, on the 60% plan, and that is essentially causing a year delay, sounds like. I assume that when you submit the 90% plan, hopefully everything is converging so that there's going to be less volatility in the schedule. I just wanted to get a sense of if you think the design phase could slip even more.
It's possible. Usually the major changes come about after the 60%, because that's when you put most of your plans on paper and people can look at it and analyze it and assess it. The 90% is really catching the loose threads. And so we foresee that all these investigations that we're doing now are probably going to button things up for us pretty much. Again, what remains unknown is that time to get the permits before we can start construction.
Okay, I have a question here.
As you mentioned, there have been many floods over the last several decades, and after each flood, there have been promises made that we're going to fix it, and it hasn't been fixed. Why should we have confidence now that this is going to work? Secondly, how are we going to pay for this? I haven't heard anything about that. That's always been a problem in the past. And third, when the dam is down and we get heavy rains, as we're likely to, is that going to mean greater threat of flood or less threat of flood?
Those are excellent questions. The board is constantly asking those same questions as you are. Listen, what I said earlier, we're all about flood protection. We're doing the best we can. I'm not going to give you any better hyperbole and say, we're on it. We're doing the best we can to find the funding mechanisms, to get the federal government to release funding, to get the permitting process. One good thing that happened this year was because of our visit in Washington last year during the flood. We met with our electeds, and we also asked them to write a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers to expedite building a safety, if you will, in Negley Park. What do we call that? A bridge, if you will, or a fence that was erected in less than 6 months in the area that flooded, that had the highest flooding area in the area. We were able to do that, but it was because we were advocating for that. So it's not like we're putting band-aids on these things. No, we want a long-term fix. We want to have a solution, not just for the 25-year, 50-year, or 100-year flood, but there's also projections for the 500-year flood. So we're looking out and as visionaries and saying, okay, what do we need to do? How do we access the resources to do this? Do we put it all on the ratepayers? Do the federal government involve themselves with the resources that they have? So we're all in it together. I'm just sharing that with you. So we're in this fight with you to win. Sure.
And your second question was, how is this project going to be paid for? Was that your next question? So this is going to be paid for through the groundwater production charges. Those are the water rates that our board sets every year for people to pay for the water that they pump out of the ground, whether they are well owners or whether they're retailers who then distribute water throughout their cities or throughout their service areas. Part of the project will be paid for by the Safe Clean Water. That was Measure B program that all the voters in the county approved in November of 2012. That's a 15-year program that annually collects a special property tax assessment on homeowners' properties and commercial properties as well. And about 70 million of that amount is going to be funded to this particular project. Right now, the project estimate is around 550 million. So that's just a little over 10%. And then, sir, your third question?
When the dam's down, is that going to make it more likely or less likely there'll be flooding?
When the dam is down, yes, all right, so when the dam is down, if you remember that central, the middle row, when we excavate the dam to a lower height, then we have to button up for the winter, then we come back, we bring it down all the way to that remnant core, build it back up to that lower height, and then we have to wait another winter before we can come back and take it all the way to its final top elevation. So during those 2 winters, whatever inflow comes from the watershed, from rainstorms, is going to be sent through that, what we call a diversion system. It's going to be channeled to Coyote Creek to flow directly to the bay. We have to protect that lower dam. That's the vulnerable spot. What we're going to be able to do with that outlet is to change the amount of flow that's coming in. For the most part, I would say that I think 70% of the time, we've done some statistical analyses using actual rainfall data and then creating what we call a Monte Carlo simulation. We just simulate many, many years based on the existing rainfall records. I think 70% of the time, the flows will likely be more than 500 cubic feet per second. All right, they'll exceed 500. That's about the maximum discharge that we get out of the outlet right now. And then will the flows go higher? 98% of the time, based on our modeling, 98% of the time, the flows will be below 1,000 cubic feet per second. All right, if you recall, the flows over the spillway in February of 2017 were close to 7,000 cubic feet per second at their peak. And then downstream, you also had tributary flow coming in from all of the side neighborhoods and the storm drains that feed into Coyote Creek. So 98% of the time in those 2 winters, we're likely not going to see anything more than 1,000 cubic feet per second coming down Coyote Creek. All right? Yes, the possibility exists that there could be flooding if we get so many back-to-back storms that we have to shunt more water so as to protect that interim dam. That is a probability, but it's going to be very, very low. The other thing I want to emphasize is that as soon as water runs from the watershed into the empty reservoir, it's going to go directly to Coyote Creek. We're not going to let it sit there and store. So you're always going to have an empty reservoir in between storms to be able to move that water directly to Coyote Creek. It's going to be an interesting time, and I'm not going to say that we're going to be completely free of risk, but the water district and the contractor are going to work together to operate that to the best extent possible to protect both the interim dam and to protect residents downstream. All right, before we go to the next question, I've got one here from Facebook, and the person asks, will this project impact walking and biking access to the Coyote Creek Trail? And we didn't show the rerouting. Let me see if I can quickly bring that up. It's a ways, I'm not going completely. But we are going to, down at the end of Malaguera, where you've got your access to the Coyote Creek Trail, we're going to reroute that so that people can use it throughout the project construction. It'll be rerouted so it'll be safe from the activity around those stockpile areas.
Question over here from this gentleman.
Yeah, if you could go back to your schedule chart, I have a couple of questions on that. You show on that chart that for NEPA, you're only preparing an environmental assessment rather than an environmental impact statement. What guarantee do you have that you won't have to prepare a NEPA environmental impact statement that will add years to your schedule before you even think of constructing?
It's a good question. We have 2 federal agencies that are working on this project in that regard, FERC DHAC and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And FERC DHAC is taking the federal lead on this. And from their experience, they believe that an EA is adequate for this particular situation. And just to highlight that, Calaveras Reservoir and its dam retrofit project, they did an EA for their project, and that was considered appropriate and suitable. So while there's no guarantees, we do have some expectation based on past and current understanding from the federal regulators that an EA is appropriate and suitable in this case.
I hope you're right, because we worked on numerous projects where an environmental assessment has been a lot more than adequate, but still being forced to do an EIS. So I hope you're right. The second question relates to high-speed rail, which used to be on this slide, but has mysteriously disappeared. High-speed rail does not have an alignment yet. They're still in the process of trying to figure out what their preferred alignment might be and how it would be built. Regardless, it seems there are going to be significant cumulative impacts between your project and the high-speed rail project along Monterey Road north of Morgan Hill because of all of their construction activity and traffic, and the traffic that you've shown on your charts coming down and going over Burnett to your project site.
Well, that's why we posed the question to the High Speed Train Authority. They gave us the information as to what their expectation is in terms of doing their construction within the Santa Clara Valley, and that will be one of the key things that we look at in the IR is as one of the life and foreseeable projects for a cumulative analysis. So yes, you're right, that will be analyzed.
Okay, I have a question back here.
Let me answer one of these Facebook questions. Will the lake reopen for recreational use prior to draining the lake? There's sort of two ways to look at that question, and that is between now and when construction starts, and that's really dependent upon how the board chooses to manage the reservoir levels. The second part of that could be looked at as once we start the drilling for the diversion structure, no, the lake will be closed for all recreational use at that point. So it depends, again, how you interpret that question. That's how we answer it.
So potentially 10 years if we close?
Well, I can't speak between now and when construction begins. I can speak to when construction starts. Recreational use will not be occurring in the reservoir during that 5 years, yes. Between now and then, it's sort of dependent upon how the board sees how they want to manage things, and and Mother Nature. So there's another question which I'll try and paraphrase, but it has to do with what I interpret to be potential landslides and how that may affect neighborhoods from some indication that there's been some of that already with the reservoir at a lower level over the last several years. As we indicated, there is a monitoring program that will go into place during construction and the reservoir dewater, and monitoring around the reservoir to look to see where there are movements and such. And then during that construction, when those sorts of landslides are detected, there'll certainly be a strategy to go in and fix them where appropriate. So,
okay.
Any other questions?
We'll right back here.
Thank you. My name is Doug Mayer. I live in Morgan Hill. My question is, how much reservoir capacity are we giving up because you're going to use it for as a site for disposal of material as well?
It's a good question, and certainly others have asked that. It turns out to be an extremely small percentage of the reservoir bottom. What you're seeing there is just a very small snapshot of the reservoir. We've calculated it out to be, just of the reservoir bottom, a couple percent, and it's only going up a few feet, all told, because it's being compacted in. So there's almost no measurable change to the reservoir capacity from that disposal.
Question over here.
Yes. John Bailey. Okay, yes, good. Asking just a domestic question about your plans. Are they yet in place to the extent that you know where the staging of equipment places will be? I ask because we Our house is opposite to the staging areas for the Half Road project now, and that is like having a war zone all day, every day except weekends. And it's really important to know this for the value of the property and everything else. Where will the staging areas be?
These two areas are focused for staging area. Oh, I'm sorry. These two areas will be staging areas, and there may be a couple other small places as the plan is sort of finalized and move forward. But again, staging areas, we're trying to do those in ways that don't affect the neighborhood, but they also have to be in locations that are appropriate and suitable for the construction process. So we've got two competing ideas to try and optimize. And
Tell me again what those areas are. I can't recognize them.
pardon me?
What roads are they? I don't understand this map too well. You pointed to two places, and I don't know where the roads are.
All right, so this is Highway 101,
Yes.
Burnett Avenue Bridge.
Yes.
So this, the bridge that crosses the creek here was washed out, I think, about 20 years ago. So that bridge is not there. We're going to rebuild it as part of this project. But this is, right now, just a gravel-based parking area right now. So that's going to be one staging area. And then Malaguera Avenue ends at the ranger station. So we're going to also be using this area here. So it's across the creek. So it's quite a distance away from any of these neighborhoods. But I do want to point out, this is another staging area here. This is Cochran Road. So Cochran Road coming off of 101 and then making that right turn and coming up to the dam embankment. So we'll be staging equipment here, over here too, and then the contractor will probably be parking equipment up at the parking lot area. So the staging areas that will be closest to neighborhoods are right here on this approach up to Anderson Dam.
We have a question over here.
This conveyor that's going along Malaguera, how large is that going to be? And if you are making Malaguera then one lane, will it be one lane in one direction? Because it would be impossible, I think, to make two-way traffic on that one existing lane that would be left.
Yeah, so a typical conveyor belt is about 6 feet, so it'll take about half a lane. So there'll be one lane which will be open to traffic all the time. What our analysis shows that the area which will be most impacted will be the houses which basically front Malaguera. And for that, we will have traffic control, basically, for residents to be able to get to their houses. So whenever the conveyor system is going to be operated, which is 2 to 3 years of the whole construction, we'll provide some sort of traffic control for residents to be able to access their homes.
Is it very noisy operation?
No, so just to give you an idea about the noise, a typical street, produces about 75 to 80 decibel at about 300 feet. Without such dampers, which would mitigate the noise, the conveyor belts only produce about 50.
And is it completely enclosed?
That's right. So there'll be minimum spill, of any material, and it will be maintained, whenever it's operated.
We have a question back here.
I have two questions. So recreationally, if you were to not be able to reopen the lake for boating, would it be possible to reopen the lake prior to 2022 for kayaking and fishing? And then when you said after you start the diversion tunnel and drilling, you're going to shut down all recreation. If the lake's not drained down yet, does that mean shore fishing is going to be closed?
During construction, in the construction year shows that it will start in 2021, the lake won't be open to any boating. The main reason being that there will be contractor equipment and contractor activity up in the parking lot, the existing parking lot. So that will make the boat ramp basically inaccessible.
So, I meant more in the interim between now and when you actually start drawing the lake down. And the other question from Facebook had asked whether or not you'd be open to boating. I'm just more asking whether or not you'll be open for fishing right up until the day you guys draw the lake down to nothing.
Again, we probably won't allow fishing in the vicinity where the dam is because of the construction activity. It's a safety issue. So access will be controlled depending on the safety and the work activities of the contractor.
Understood. I meant prior to construction.
So prior to construction, I think, like Rick mentioned, it will depend on the level of the creek, level of the reservoir, how our board decides to manage the reservoir. It will depend on the Mother Nature, what kind of rain we get, whether the reservoir level will come up or not.
And I just want to add that we work very closely with County Parks and Rec Department. So we're in contact with them. They are also watching and monitoring the lake levels, and we're going to have a discussion with them again next spring, as we did this spring, about the likelihood, and again, it all depends on what kind of a winter we have, the likelihood of boating being made available in the coming summer, and then the summer after that. It's going to be a year-by-year kind of a decision.
And here's a question. Thank you. Yes, it's sort of a technical question here. The problem we had in February this last year was the outlet pipe was unable to keep up with the inflow to the reservoir. And so that was 400 plus CFS, and I understand from what Catherine said that the proposed new outlet structure plus the high-level outlet structure would accommodate something in the order of 1,000 CFS. Is that's going to cause an increased flow, certainly in the creek. And you need to have channel improvements to prevent flooding, and those channel improvements you would typically start at the downstream end, as in San Jose, and work back up to the discharge area. Are you guys keeping the cart in front of the horse so that we don't cause additional flooding?
The pipes that are going to be in place when the dam is reconstructed are going to have a higher capacity than just 1,000. The example I made is that if we had had the capability of discharging 1,000 CFS in the winter of 2017, and we've done the modeling, we would not have had any spill over the Anderson spillway. All right, so again, we don't know if we'll ever have an exact repeat of the 2017 storm pattern, but we will have the capability of releasing more than we have now. We're always going to be cognizant of the vulnerable areas downstream that may be susceptible to flooding before other areas. And perhaps Afshin can add a little bit more about the level of protection that this upcoming project is planning for.
Right. No, that was a great answer. I mean, just in terms of what you said last, Catherine, we have areas downstream in the urban area of Coyote Creek with capacity, with threshold of flooding as low as about 2,000 to 3,000 CFS. So releasing at 1,000 CFS and having some inflow from tributaries downstream of the dam may get you close to that point. So we have to be very careful in what we're releasing purposely out of the dam. But of course, that is controllable by the district, you know, in terms of how much you're allowing to go through the pipe. Coyote Creek is a complicated flood problem because it has a very large watershed downstream of the dam as well. So that has a peak after a rain event that goes through the system, and then we get the peak from upstream that goes through the system after it flows through the reservoirs. So we have to operate these reservoirs very carefully so that we don't unintentionally cause that flood problem, yes, in the future.
I have a question right here about post-project mitigation.
So the second part to my question earlier was what, and I know you haven't completed your EIR, but are there any plans in place for restoring fisheries and habitat after the construction project?
Do you mean fisheries and habitat in the downstream portion of Coyote Creek? Or up in the reservoir?
In the reservoir.
In the reservoir?
Yes. That's a good question that I can't really answer right now because our approach is, as you probably know, much of the fisheries in the reservoir are non-native fish. And so that's a recreational aspect. And we're looking at things also which we have to do with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries Service, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have to look at what effects we're having on natural systems and how do we restore those. So to the degree that we're restoring native fish populations in those creek systems, you know, they'll probably, some of the native fish that already exist in Santa Fe Creek, Los Santos Creek, upper Coyote Creek, those will likely get back into the reservoir, but the district itself, as part of this project, will not look to restore warm water fishing into the reservoir. I don't know what the county has or is maybe planning, but that's not it's not an objective of the district.
Question here.
Thank you. We've got two questions. I'm Alan Jensen. I live here in Morgan Hill. The first question is, how can you guarantee the imported material from the dam are free from unhealthy contaminants? And then the second question is fundamentally different. If a large earthquake occurred tonight and it created a breach in the dam, how long would it take the water to reach the town here in Monterey Road?
So the answer to your first question about quality of the imported material, most of this imported material will be from quarry where the material is properly screened and properly controlled, even for hazardous materials. So they are all tested basically, and we require that certification from the quarry to be provided to us before they haul in any material from these quarries. So that's how we control it. And, oh, okay. Go ahead. So, the answer to your second question was if there was an earthquake and if the dam were to develop some sort of cracking, how long before we get flooded? Well, it depends. So what we have right now on the website are the inundation maps. So inundation maps are, if you look at the timings and stuff like that, those are it's a model based on the worst condition. Okay, so it's okay, there's an earthquake and the dam suddenly breaches. Okay. However, in an actual event, okay, things could be very different. Okay, there could be progression which would allow us to control the situation, strengthen the dam again, so on and so forth. So it's hard to say what could happen. But if you look at the inundation maps, if you look at the inundation time for Morgan Hill, it's pretty short. It's about 30 minutes in some areas, and then it's even worse as we get closer to the dam. Yeah, if you're very close to the dam.
A question over here? Okay, forgive me, my voice is half missing right now. I'm a downtown San Jose resident, and I have both sort of an intellectual side, but also an emotional side to addressing this. First of all, I recall that the estimate, the map where estimates are made for the amount of CFS that should amount to a flood were off by nearly a factor of 2 on the day of the flood. I remember they were saying 10,000 CFS would be enough to flood Rock Springs, and that flooded at 5, and it was about 11,000 for our neighborhood that flooded at 6. So I wanted to know, has that been addressed? Secondarily, this is sort of the connector here is the pipe, which I understand to be about, I don't know, greater than 1,000 CFS as planned. it seems like an excellent idea, but to consider that this is information that we have to hear not just as, you know, an engineering problem, but literally, possibly, what already has caused our neighbors to lose their homes. It's a very serious issue. What reassurances do we have that this is going to be done promptly, you know, professionally, given that we've been paying taxes for all kinds of fixes that haven't happened for about since 18 years, 2000, and then again in 2012. I mean, I understand that this has to be done piece by piece, but in the big picture, anybody in our neighborhood, we need to know that this is being done properly. And when's the pipe going to be there, right?
So, in terms of the creek capacities, you know, there were some mistakes in terms of the creek capacity, creek capacity in the natural channel is, as we explained after the flood, is always an estimate because it varies depending on the vegetation amount, the condition of the channel and things like that. So the question becomes, you know, in the areas that flooded the most, which the Selma Island Park or Rock Springs, that was certainly within the bounds of the natural vegetation growth in the channel. Now, one thing that we have up-to-date information on, obviously, because of the event, is at this flow event, what the elevation of the creek is going to be. So that number is very much updated. The flow models are updated. And even though we may do, as part of a project, we may do future management, you know, in the creek. We will always take the conservative approach in terms of what the roughness would be in the channel some years in the future, because you never know, you know, what can happen in the future. So our project, as we're designing it, will be based on those conditions last year, because that's the best information we have at this point. So I think, yeah.
And let me take a crack at the second question. So your concern is how is the new pipe going to be operated professionally so that...
How and when?
How and when, all right. So the new pipe, the new outlet will be constructed as part of this project. So if the project begins in 2021 or 2022, that pipe will be in place and ready to operate when the reservoir is ready to be filled again and used for water supply. It will be in place by 2026, 2027, all right? It will be operated at the same level of care and diligence that we have been operating our reservoirs for the last, I think we're almost 90 years old as a water district. That doesn't mean that we can guarantee complete safety because of the nature of rainfall in this area. I also want to emphasize that in terms of the management and the alert systems that will likely be in place for the entire county possibly 10 years from now is maybe something that we can't even dream of. It was only 10 years ago that the iPhone was introduced to the world, right? And you can just look back and realize how much technology has changed in our lives and how many leaps have already been taken in the way technology is part of almost everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. 10 years from now, I think we cannot imagine what kind of systems will be in place that we haven't had that we'll be able to use to keep people in clear communication about significant events that are coming or that may happen. And that in and of itself should help to mitigate serious conditions and consequences when they will occur.
To your question about the guarantee, the people in the southeast part of the country were asking their officials and their public leadership to guarantee that they would not be impacted by the hurricanes and the massive amount of damage and death that we just recently witnessed because of events that were caused by Mother Nature. So there are no guarantees. All we can say to you is that we can do the best we can. All of us. Now, you have the last word. If you don't like what we as the elected people are doing, you can vote us out of office and put somebody else in that can guarantee these things to you. And there you are. There's your answer. You don't like out with the old, in with the new. But I'm certain that you're going to hear the same message, no matter who's in front of you. It's impossible to guarantee what Mother Nature is going to bring to us. All we can do is our best. Thank you.
We're talking about the interim solution, the interim preventative measures that you're going to take. You're telling us that's going to be what 16, 20 years out?
Well, we're working on that.
Right, that you're going to put in. Oh, we'll have to wait, who knows how long,
Yeah,
with the climate changing.
correct. Yeah.
You're telling us we have to wait for a pipe that you said would prevent, would possibly prevent.
And our best guess
flood in
estimate.
our area.
That's the messaging. So let's look historically at what we have here. Anderson Dam was built in the 50s. It was not built as a flood protection dam. It was built as a water supply. What did this area look like in the early 50s? From here all the way to San Francisco. What did the region look like? Before there was a dam, Coyote Creek flooded annually, and the farmers loved it. They said, free water, isn't this amazing? Now let's fast forward from the 50s through today. The amount of development that has been allowed along the creek, at the front of the base of the dam, these are issues that we can't control. But as far as the amount of water that we received, the storms that we received, all we can do is forecast for them and prepare for them and advise you, and hopefully we all come out ahead.
A question back here?
So in the 90s, we learned that the fish that were in the reservoir were more than the outlet could take. What is the district going to be doing with that amount of fish that's going to be there when they dewater this for the second time in 20 years?
Another good question, and yeah, the amount of biomass that comes out of the reservoir from any kind of reservoir from dewatering can be quite significant. And there's going to have to be a plan put into place to deal with that amount of biomass that comes out. In some cases, they'll have to find locations to bury it because it is quite significant. And so before the reservoir is dewatered, all of this will be worked out, and part of that is going to be part of any of the permitting that we have to get from the regulatory agencies as to how we deal with that. And so exactly how that's going to look and how we manage that amount of biomass, we don't have all those details yet, but that's what's in the coming months is how we're pulling that together.
Okay, we have a question here.
Are you taking into consideration the solar, the sun's plus and minus on the amount of activity it has when you're taking all of the water into consideration? Because it goes through a 10-year cycle, plus or minus 1 year. And for the last 50, 60 years, I have watched it. I've been in the floods in the 45, 55, 65, 75, 84. They go through the sun goes through a 10-year cycle, plus or minus 1 year, basically. And from 84, then we went into 95, 105. I thought we were going to have more rain in 15 this year, but it turned out to be the tail end of 16. And then who knows what's going to happen. Where the sun right now is at solar minimum. We're coming out of solar minimum. So anyway, my question is, are you guys doing any kind of consideration with what the sun is going to do and what it's done for the last 300 years?
That is a very good question. We don't follow solar flares or sun activity in terms of trying to forecast what kind of winters or how heavy rainfall is going to be. We tend to rely on NOAA and other weather services to provide that forecast. In fact, I believe tomorrow there is going to be a NOAA discussion with our board for a look ahead at what kind of a winter is expected based on the weather patterns and the temperature of the oceans, where the jet stream is, and if that big blob is going to come back and sit over the Pacific and prevent storms from coming into California. So we're not weather forecasters, so we do rely on other agencies who study that and are probably much better at predicting things than we are. I have one more question that came on via Facebook, and this is, where the road will be closed for 5 years, is it ever going to be widened so it is safe? So the question is that bend around Cochrane Road as you come up to the base of the dam, is that going to be widened? We have no plans to widen it. It is a county road. We are likely going to have to repave it after all the truck traffic and heavy equipment that will be traveling that road for 5 years. The county will ask us to repave it and restore it to a good condition. We're prepared to do that, but whether the county has any plans to widen it, we certainly haven't heard from them. We have been discussing this project with them. So that may be something that will still come, but it'll be up to the county to make that call and make that decision and put together the design for that kind of widening.
Question over here.
Yeah, this is amazing. Everybody's wondering about the flow of the creek. My big question is, you got a big earthquake fault line on the other side of Anderson. Has there been any studies on transverse shock waves? Or what will the dam take in a major earthquake?
So you're correct. I mean, San Andreas Fault is on the other side of the valley, basically. And the fault which is closest to the dam is Calaveras, which is located about, where the hills are, the foothills on the other side of the reservoir. And there are numerous other faults in the close vicinity of the dam, and we have analyzed all the faults basically as required. And the governing faults, which actually govern the behavior of the dam, are Calaveras Dam, and there are two local faults, the Coyote Ridge Front Fault, and it's spliced there, basically, which governs the behavior of the dam.
What will the dam take to correct that?
Oh, the new dam will be designed for 7.25 Richter.
7.25?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it survived smaller earthquakes throughout its history, all the way from 5 to 6.8. 6.4 in the Morgan Hill earthquake. I mean, so it's been through a lot. And then, of course, the Loma Prieta earthquake, which happened.
Do we have a Facebook question?
All right, Facebook question. The longer we take to build this new dam, the more we will be paying for it. Why does it take 10 years to design and start construction of a dam? The Calaveras Reservoir Retrofit project was supposed to take 5 years at a cost of $500 million. The project was just completed. It took 7 years at a cost of $700 million. So what we're trying to do, there was a problem during construction of Calaveras where it was determined that not enough geotechnical investigations had been done, and where they were building the new dam was not going to be stable enough to support it in the long run. That's a very simplified, I probably didn't even get it completely correct, but construction halted, and then there was a period of time where additional geotechnical work had to be done, a redesign had to be done, and the contractor was waiting on the sidelines and adding to his delay claims, because that's what contractors do when they are told to stop work. They'll start adding the claims to compensate for that loss of time. And the overall project, as this person put, was close to 700 million. The reason we're taking the time we are to do all the geotechnical investigations is to avoid exactly this occurrence when we're peeling back this dam and deconstructing it, hauling everything off to the stockpiles. We don't want to find an uh-oh when we're a third of the way through or halfway through, because we could end up in the same situation as Calaveras. So the person is also correct. The longer it takes to get to construction, the more, just because of yearly inflation, things are going to cost. So it's a balance. Are you going to collect enough data so that you are confident in moving through your planned construction, versus what risks are you willing to take in order to hurry to construction and deal with problems while you're in construction? No easy answer there. We're taking the more cautious approach because we believe it's going to end up with a project that we can construct within that 5-year period. I have another question. How do we prepare for the worst, as where we live there is zero time to get to safety? So I presume it's been asked by somebody who lives in Morgan Hill, and that if there was a serious breach of the dam and the reservoir was full, that there would be a major inundation of this area. It would extend all the way up to San Francisco Bay. It would run through San Jose, and then it would also run down to the south through Gilroy, actually come into the Pajaro River, and eventually flow into Monterey Bay. The inundation maps that Hemong had mentioned earlier can be found on the City of Morgan Hill's website as well. How do we prepare for the worst? Well, because of our seismic restriction on the amount of volume that we can maintain in that reservoir, that is protection for the community until such time as we strengthen the dam, correctly construct the new embankments so that it can withstand a major earthquake. Right now, the community is safe, unless lightning strikes the entire thing and cleaves it in two, which is not going to happen. So it's good to be prepared. If you live in Morgan Hill and there is going to be a bigger earthquake, chances are that the dam is not going to just settle completely down to ground zero. There's just too much earth there. So we will be monitoring it. We will take measures to reduce the amount of flow. If water is flowing through the dam, we will take measures to reduce that amount and hold the dam together while evacuation is taking place here in Morgan Hill, Gilroy, in San Jose. Going up to an elevation of 30 to 40 feet above the valley floor level here is probably going to be enough to be out of harm's way. But the City of Morgan Hill, I know, has evacuation plans in such an event. And you want to add something?
As far as being prepared, one thing that the Water District has been doing is those of you that are on social media, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, we are constantly messaging, and also through print media, whether it's in a local newspaper. Here it's the Morgan Hill Times, it's the Country News, it's the Dispatch. We take every measure to constantly suggest to you, be prepared. From August through now, we have been issuing suggestions for you to be prepared in case of an earthquake, in case there's a flood. We are constantly messaging. Each one of the directors, I'm one of 7, we personally message through the social media those anticipations of those kinds of occurrences and suggest you be prepared. Don't make an assumption that we're not going to have that big earthquake. That would be a big mistake. Or the next flood. That would be a big mistake. Always be prepared. That's our suggestion, and we're going to continue to message you, and hopefully you are prepared.
Any more questions?
A lot more Facebook questions. Okay, a few more. So here's one. Since water level is going to be kept at 55%, that's our current seismic restriction, will it allow for boating, or since you are overcompensating for potential flooding, does that mean recreation will be closed until 2027? So we are overcompensating as the board decided to lower the reservoir level last winter. That was primarily to keep it at the seismic restricted level. All right, there's incidental flood benefits, yes, but it was really for the safety of the community in the event of an earthquake. Does that mean recreation will be closed until 2027? Again, if we have a wetter winter this year than we did last year, then the levels in Anderson Lake may rise to the point where boating will be possible next summer. There's another one, will the lake reopen for recreational use prior to draining it? Again, I think I just answered that question. Another one says bypass to release water on basins in case of emergencies instead of it going to Coyote Creek only. And I don't know what basins this person is referring to. If we release from the dam, it's going to go to Coyote Creek. Did you have one, Ramon?
Another question from Facebook. Living at the base of the dam, what type of noise, vibration, and dust can we expect? That's still being studied because we're still doing calculations as to what would be a conservative estimate of the amount of trucks and things that move as we're finalizing sort of the stockpile plan. As with any kind of a construction project, there will be a series of mitigations that will have to be evaluated and determined as to how they may, in fact, lessen some of these things. But there will be noise, there will be vibration, and there will be dust. But we will follow standard procedures to sort of lessen the dust, do what we can to minimize the impact to the local neighborhoods. But again, we don't have the information just yet.
Okay, the room is empty. I think it's a little after 8 o'clock, and we had promised to hold this meeting until 8. So at this point, we appreciate all of the questions that came in via Facebook. We appreciate the questions that you posed to us. We hope that our answers were honest and it had the integrity that you expect. We are going to be around for a few more minutes, so if you have questions, don't hesitate to come up to us. And if you have any questions on the phone board, staff will be there to provide you some answers. So again, thank you for your interest, and please come again.
Please leave us your survey. Thank you.